Unfoldment. We're in chapter 14, where now what we're learning is the discrimination between the self and not self, or what we call Atma, Anatma, Viveka. And in the previous chapter, we have seen how it is done through Pañca Viveka, how examining each sheath and seeing that the sheaths are not me. Then last week, we talked a little bit about the Śarīra Traya, or the three bodies, examining three bodies and realizing that they are not me. Then we talked about Avastha Traya, or examining the three states and realizing that they are not me. Okay? Now what I've done is I've kind of put all of these things together, okay? And that way it becomes easier to see, because sometimes when we look at this, we become all confused and it seems like it's a lot. It seems like it's a lot, and sometimes it seems like it's so detailed. And I think one of the questions also asked was, it's really, really detailed. It's really detailed to give us that much clarity. Our rishis want us to see the mistake in all layers, in all ways, in all forms, so that we become very clear. And the basis for all of these Vivekas, our basis is the Upanishad. So all of this, what we're studying in self-unfoldment, the text, the source text is our Upanishad. And later on, we will see why this is our authoritative text, why this is our, what we call pramana, or means of knowledge. So let's see here, Atma, Anatma, Viveka. So this is just so we're all on the same page, because I know this portion can be quite a lot. Okay, so Atma means the self, Anatma, the not self, Viveka, discrimination between the two. First, we have the Pañca kosha. Pancha means 5, kosha means sheaths, okay? And the 5 sheaths listed are here. Annamaya, the food sheath, which is really the gross body. Pranamaya, which is the vital air sheath, which is the 5 pranas, prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, and the 5 karme indriyas, or karma indriyas, faculty of grasping, of locomotion, of speech, of reproduction, of evacuation. Manomaya is the mind sheath, which has the mind and the 5 jnanendriyas, or faculty of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Vijnanamaya is the intellectual sheath, which contains the intellect and the 5 jnanendriyas, same are here. And we have Anandamaya, or the bliss sheath, which contains ajnana, or ignorance, and vasanas. Okay, so this we have all seen, but I'm just kind of laying it out here so that you get the chart, and then we will all put it together. The next one we saw was the 3 bodies, or what we call Śarīra Traya. And here we analyzed it in a different way. So sheaths is one way, 3 bodies is a different way. And the 3 bodies are Sthula Śarīra, or gross body, because it's manifest to my senses. Sukshma Śarīra, which is the subtle body, which is not manifest to my senses. Karana Śarīra, which is the causal body, which is the cause. That's why it's called causal body. The material cause, so first we will start with the gross body. The gross body is made up of 5 grossified elements. Why is the body shaped the way it is shaped? It's because of my prarabdha karma. What is the function of this gross body? Bhogayatana. It's a counter to experience the world. So remember, when we have to experience the world, we experience through this body. So if somebody wants to find out where we are, we live in our body. It's this counter. So remember, I said, which city do you live in? The city of 9 gates. Navadwara Pure Dehi. The city of 9 gates is where the jiva lives, because we have 9 holes. Then we saw that the parts of the physical body are all of this: the head, the shoulders, the arms, the legs, stomach, etc. Back. And the physical body, the modifications, it goes through what we call shad vikaras, or birth, maturity, decay, disease, death. All of these things are the modifications of the body. This is what the body goes through. So if we are getting white hair, that's what we're meant to get. That's the body. Sthula Sharīra. Sukshma Sharīra is made up of 5 subtle elements. And why do we have the kind of mind that we have? Why do we have a human mind as opposed to an animal mind? All of that is because of our prarabdha karma. What is the function of this? Bhoga sadhana. This is the experiencer. So the real experiencer of the world is not the body. The body is the counter for experience. The experiencer is the jiva, the one who feels joy, who feels sorrow, who feels anger, who feels calmness. That's the jiva. And that is the subtle body. The subtle body is made up of, we can say, 19 or 17 components, depending on how you see it. So 5 faculties of knowledge, 5 faculties of action, 5 pranas, the mind, buddhi, intellect, chitta, memory, ahankara, ego. And the modifications that come in the subtle body are joy, sorrow, the feeling of joy, the feeling of sorrow, the feeling of gain, the feeling of loss, of honor, of insult. All of these feelings come in the realm of the subtle body. All of these modifications come in that realm. Now we have the causal body. The causal body is the cause of the gross and subtle body, as we saw. So therefore, what if someone asks, what is the cause of the causal body? It's beginningless. It's always there. And how we explained last time, ignorance is beginningless. There's no start date. Since when were we ignorant of the French language? We don't know. We're just ignorant of it. And therefore, there's no material cause or no efficient cause for it. It is beginningless. However, its function, Śarīra dvayasya karana matram, it's the cause of the gross and subtle bodies. Does it have any parts? No. It's nirvikalpa, it's without any divisions. And does it have any modifications? It's one homogeneous mass. That is what we call karana sharira, or ignorance. Okay, so now we have seen it thus far. So everyone clear, everyone on the same page? Panchakosha Sharīra Traya. Now we're going to get to the next, where we see Avastha Traya. And this is where we left off last week, is Avastha Traya. So I'll just share this chart and then we look at it a little deeper and then we move forward. Avasthatraya means the 3 states. So we have Jagrat, waking, Swapna, dream, or Sushupti, deep sleep. Waking is a state where sense objects are perceived by sense organs. The primary identification is with the gross body, and the name of the waker is Vishwa. This you don't need to know so much, but Vishwa. Swapna, or dream, is the world that is projected, is the impressions of waking. The main identification is with the subtle body, and this is called Tejasa, the dreamer. Sushupti is a state where one doesn't know anything and enjoys a good sleep. And the main identification is with the causal body, and the name is Prajna. Okay? So we are in the 3 states. So in the 5 sheets we analyzed, we are not the 5 sheets. In the 3 bodies we analyzed, we are not the 3 bodies. And the constant thing that we have to apply here is, I am changeless. I am changeless all of this is changing. These sheaths, these bodies are changing. I am conscious. All of these things are inert. I am the seer, or I am the experiencer. All of these things are seen or experienced. We also saw the logic that what is I cannot be mine. If this cup is mine, it cannot be I. Okay? So we saw the logic why these sheaths, why these bodies cannot be who we are. Now we'll take a little deeper look into the states. So we said the waking state is where we experience the world, right? The sense organs experience the sense objects. And therefore, although the gross subtle body and causal body are there, most identification with the gross body takes place. And we come to the dream state wherein whatever vasanas we had stored up that we couldn't express in waking for some reason or the other, because in waking state that intellect is fully alert, they come into our dream, and what we get is an unedited version of our vasanas. And in so varied and mixed forms, we get it in our dream. But they're impressions from our waking state. Now I'll stop here for a second, analyze what happens from waking to dream. From waking to dream, we take the waker, that waker you, which our name was Vishwa, completely disappears in dream. That waker you in dream state, there's no notion of your gross body, because your gross body is, you don't use it in dream. If you're dreaming, you take on a different identity. And that you may have a body, but it's not the gross body, it's a subtle body. We have a different name, we have a different look, we have different people around us. That whole waker, that whole concept of the waker completely disappears in the dream state. So I have no notion of my body. The waking world completely disappears in dream state for me. So I have no notion of this waking world. This is what happens. And we come to dream and we take on a subtle body and everything happens, everything goes on. Now, what happens when we go to deep sleep? Now, deep sleep is a state wherein we saw that there is nothingness. We are aware that there's nothing there. When we wake up, we're aware that there was nothing in deep sleep. In deep sleep, the mind and the intellect are completely dormant, and everything is though one. It becomes one mass. It's like, when it's dark, you can't really distinguish anything. You can't distinguish where's your table, where's your chair, where's your bookshelf. You can't distinguish anything. Like that, in deep sleep, you can't distinguish anything at all. You can't distinguish anything at all. Everything, your mind, intellect, equipment is dormant, and there is this nothingness there, blankness. What happens when the dreamer goes to deep sleep? That dreamer's lost. Whatever identity that I took up in my dream, whatever name, whatever form there was, that identity is completely lost in deep sleep. So even my mind, my intellect is negated. It is lost because in deep sleep, now I have no notion. I have no notion of who I am, not even like a dream. I have no notion of who I am. I have no notion of any world whatsoever. I have no notion of anything. It completely just disappeared. It went blank on me. And therefore, Vedanta says, if you keep disappearing in different states, then that cannot be you. If that waker, who we take ourselves to be, disappears in dream state, that waker cannot be you. It's gone. When you dream, you're gone. that dreamer or even waker, when you put it in deep sleep state, it's gone. So if you and I think that you and I are this waker, this person who is awake and alive in the waking world, we're not. We're not. This is just an identity. It's just a personality, because the minute it gets to the next state, it's gone. And therefore, Vedanta says, how can that be you? How can that be you if when you take it to the next state, it's gone? And here we see, and we have seen the story of Janak Maharaj that I shared before. He was a king. He was a very, very prosperous king. And he dreamt that he was a beggar. He dreamt that he was a beggar. And he dreamt that, his whole empire, somebody took over his empire, took over everything he had, and he was sent to exile. And then he was just, famished. He had no food and he was begging for food and he couldn't get any food anywhere. And finally, he woke up. He woke up and he was shaken up. And he said, oh my God, that dream felt so real. And he says, which one is true? Am I a king dreaming that I'm a beggar? Or am I a beggar dreaming that I'm a king? Which one is true? And when Ashtavakra comes to his kingdom, because nobody could answer his question, he kept asking this question, he kept asking it, he kept on going to so many people, nobody could answer his question. And so finally Ashtavakra said, you're not a king, you're not a beggar, but in and through now your king, your kingship, there is something there. You're there or not? And he says, I'm there. And he said, in your dream that you were a beggar, you're there or not? He says, I'm there. So therefore, he says, the king is not real. The beggar is not real. But you, that pure awareness, you are that which is real. Not the identity of the king, not the personality of the king, not the manifestation of the king, nor of the beggar. All of that is not real because it clearly disappeared in the next state. But you, that which is constantly there, that is true. And therefore, Vedanta says, we are not the waker, we're not the dreamer, and we're not the deep sleeper, but we are the witness of the three states. That's who we are. That is called Avastha Traya Sakshi. You are the witness of the three states. You are that which is constantly there throughout the three states. So look at this here, huh? So you will be able to see in this chart that I have. What happens in waking? This is your ego. In waking, ego is fully there. And we saw sense organs interact with sense objects, and there is a subject-object division. It means I'm interacting with the world. Clearly, there's a subject and there's an object. And what happens in dream is that ego is partially available. And we know it's based on the play of vasanas. Everything in the dream is in subtle form. It's your mind that really becomes everything in the dream. And there is a subject-object division. In the dream, there is a dreamer, and there are the dream objects. There's the dream plays, dream everything. In deep sleep, the ego is dormant. No interaction, and there's no subject-object division. There's no subject-object. There is no interacting with anybody. There's absolutely no division. Huh? And therefore, the ego is dormant. So this is what's happening to the ego. It keeps changing. It changes its personalities, it changes its forms, it changes its ways. It's not available as it is in the waking the same way in dream. It keeps changing. But in and through these changes, there's a non-changing substratum existing in all the three states. That substratum is called Atma. That which illumines all three states, that is called Atma. And that is who you really are. That's Atma. So, what now? I'm going to look at this all together now, all together, so that you get the complete picture. Okay? What is the not self? If we want to know very clearly what is the not self, what is the not self? This is the sheath, the body, the state. What is the not self? The 5 sheaths, the 3 bodies, and the 3 states. And if you map it together, this is what it will look like. The not self is the food sheath, which is the gross body, which has its predominant play in the waking state. This is the not self. The not self is the vital air sheath, the mind sheath, the intellectual sheath, which is also what consists of the subtle body. So you can juxtapose these together. Huh? And as I said, these Vivekas are just different ways of looking at the same thing. But our rishis made it that way so that sometimes one way doesn't appeal to us. This has its predominant play in dream, or what we call swapna. As we see in dream, what's happening, everything is our mind only, it's our subtle body. This Anandamaya or bliss sheath is also called the causal body, and it has its predominant play in deep sleep. So that ignorance is there definitely as it is in deep sleep and in all states. And we have Priya, Moda, and Pramoda, which we talked about before, experienced in waking. And very interestingly, why is it called Anandamaya Kosha? Why is it called bliss sheath? Why is this causal body bliss sheath? Because in deep sleep, one very interesting thing to note is that we are the happiest that we've ever been. Throughout the day, if you want to know where is your happiest moment, my happiest moment is when I am sleeping. That is our happiest moment, and that's why it's called bliss sheath. Huh? And guess what's the best thing about bliss sheath is that you don't need any object. It proves that bliss can be there without any object. You are at your happiest without any object in deep sleep state, which means you can be at your happiest without any object in any state. That's direct proof. That is something you can experience here and now. Now question can come, how do you witness deep sleep state? That's a very good question. See, in deep sleep state, what happens is the ego is dormant. So the ego can't know anything, can't experience anything. Nothing can happen to that ego. But when you wake up, when the ego wakes up, the ego says, I slept well, right? So what's happening in deep sleep state is that witness, consciousness, is illumining the absence of the ego. This consciousness, what we call chit, it illumines the presence of the ego and it illumines the absence of the ego. So when the ego is playing or doing whatever it is, that consciousness illumines it. Same time, in the deep sleep state, when the ego is dormant, it cannot experience anything. It cannot experience anything. That consciousness illumines that ego. It illumines the absence of it. It's absent. So in deep sleep, your ego cannot really experience anything. But when it wakes up, it says, I slept well. Something, I slept well. I slept well, and I was very peaceful. So that witness is not an actual, I am witnessing it. That's also another important point. It's not you're witnessing it. So I'm witnessing this. It's a very passive kind of thing. It's that in its presence, things are happening. It's not an active witness that I'm witnessing this, I'm witnessing that. Consciousness is not like that. Consciousness is just a presence and an awareness. And in that awareness, everything happens. It is likened to the sun. There's this wonderful verse. It's called Yasya Sannidhi Matrena. Okay? What it says is, in the presence of the sun, everyone is woken up to action. Everyone does their thing. Just when in the presence of the sun, okay? Everyone just rises and goes and performs their activity. It's not that the sun says, I'm burning, I'm shining on you, check me out. No, it's the sun's nature to shine, but in its presence, everything's woken up to activity. The same way, it's in your nature. Awareness is your nature. And in that presence, everything is woken up and everything sleeps. So it's not an active witnessing. In your presence, everything happens. Just as in the sun's presence, everything just happens. Everything's woken up. Is this point clear? Yeah. So this is what's called the not self. Okay? Now I'm just going to pause here to make sure everything. So a question comes that can you be in your body and have that understanding of Atma? So first, yes, and this will become clear, very, very clear when we go into the nature of Atma. Okay? So let's go a little bit deeper and then we will see exactly what is this Atma. So first, as we saw what Atma is not, the not self. Okay? So I'm going to share this again so it becomes very clear in your mind. And if you need a copy of this, I will share it with you. So all of this, as we saw, is the not self. So the first part is we have to be very clear about this. That there's all these sheaths that exist, there's all these bodies that exists, there are all these states, and this is the not self. This is not me. And we have to be clear about why am I not these sheaths or bodies or states. So these concepts as changing versus changeless, seen versus seer, inert versus conscious, possessed versus possessor, means it is mine possessed versus I. So these things which we have examined before, that also has to be clear. Once those 2 points are clear, then we get into the definition of Atma. Who am I? And the definition of Atma, or this is you now, this is who you are. The definition of who you are is that which is beyond the Pañca kosha, beyond the 5 sheaths, that which is different from the Śarīra Traya, the 3 bodies, that which is the witness of the 3 states, avasthatraya, and that which is of the nature of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. And this definition is based, of course, on our Upanishads and primarily also in Tattva Bodha, which we will study later on. So this is the definition of Atma. So this we have seen 5 sheaths, 3 bodies we have seen, 3 states we have seen. Now we will see exactly what is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Then after understanding this, then one will get a better understanding of Atma. Okay? Right? So now we will go to the next part of the definition where we are exploring Sat, Chit, Ananda. What is Sat? When we look at the word Sat, Sat means existence. So that which is existence But what kind of existence? It's a changeless existence. Okay? Asti. It's there, but it tishtati. It stays as it is. So it's a changeless existence. Not only it's a changeless existence, it's a constant. It's a constant. So, for example, we have these two kinds of existence. What is one we call parinami nitya? Parinami nitya means it's a constant presence, but it changes. It's a constant presence, but it changes. So, like you're standing in a river, and the river's continuously flowing, but every time the water hits your legs, it's a different water. It's different water. So even if that presence is always there, it's not the same presence all the time. Just like flowing water that's touching your feet. What we mean by Sat is Kutastha Nitya, where it's a changeless constant. It's constantly there, that presence is constantly there, and it's also changeless. It's the exact same presence all the time. That is called Sat. So that in you, which is that presence, it's always there, it never changed. And one more point is that it can never be negated. It's non-negatable. What do you mean? You see, the gross body is negated in dream. You don't even feel your body in dream. It's completely negated. The mind, intellect, equipment is negated in deep sleep. So it's negated, you don't feel it. Negated means that it's gone. You don't feel anything. So those things are what we call mithya. They are false because they can be negated. But when we say sat, it's a constant, changeless presence which can never be negated. And that is you. So in you, there is something there that can never be negated. It's always there. In and throughout, how many changes in your body, how many changes in your name, your personality, in your roles, in the way you live life, in and through all of these changes that you and I had in our lives, there's something changeless there. There's something changeless at the root of it. And that changeless is called Sat, changeless existence. Now, this changeless presence, which is constant, non-negatable, what else is it? It's not only a changeless presence, but it's an awareness. So the existence, the changeless existence is indicated by Sat. And this is the nature of Atma. That awareness is indicated by the word Chit. So we're exploring Sat, Chit, Ananda. Awareness. What is this awareness? Is it me being aware of something, or is it just awareness? What do you mean? So now here, I will give you this distinction exactly between the ego and consciousness. And if you keep this in mind, then you will know what consciousness is. Every time you say, I know this computer, I know this book, I know this table, I know this cup. When it's a voice kind of I know, that is called ego. If it's something that's unvoiced, that is consciousness. Consciousness cannot speak, cannot say anything, cannot talk. So, and anytime you voice something out, it's the ego. But when you are unable to voice it out, it's consciousness. Anytime you think something, that's the ego. Anytime you're not thinking, you can't think of consciousness, that is consciousness. The ego is something that says, I am happy, or I know I am happy, or, I think I am happy. But consciousness is something that just illumines the happiness. It's just an awareness. It just illumines it. Happiness is happening, and just it's a presence, an awareness. Or I am sad, or I know I'm sad, or I'm really feeling sad. You know you're sad. You're feeling sad. That is all ego. But I'm just an awareness. I'm just a presence. And in that presence, sadness is happening. That presence, that awareness is called consciousness. And it's like that exercise that I asked you to do last time, wherein you take a thought and you identify with that thought and you go up and down. But when you just step aside from that thought and just be and let that thought come, let that thought go, there's so much freedom. And that's another key difference, is that the ego identifies with every thought, identifies with every feeling, identifies with every emotion. That ego always takes it to heart and identifies and takes it to be itself. And therefore, because of that identification, that ego suffers. Sadness is coming, I take it on me, I am sad. Coolness is coming, I take it very cold, I take it on me, I'm feeling very cold. Boredom is coming, I take it on me, I am bored. The ego, it takes whatever emotion, whatever thought, whatever is happening, it takes it upon itself. And therefore, that taking it upon itself, it suffers. But that pure consciousness, let's say happiness comes, even if it's good, happiness comes, peace comes, joy comes, the ego is just ever present. But it comes, it goes, it comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. Therefore, the ego is completely detached and at peace, because it's not taking it upon the witness consciousness is completely detached. It's free. Things will come, things will go, let them come, let them go. It's completely detached. And therefore, that consciousness, what we call chit, is ever unaffected. With the ego, you're taking it to be you, taking this to be you, taking that to be you, and it's so much suffering. With consciousness, it's complete freedom. Let everything and anything happen. It's all happening in my awareness. I have nothing to do with it. Why? Because this is seen, and I am the ultimate seer. So we saw that with this ego, every time you say, you voice out, you verbally say, every time you think, every time you take something to be you, that is called the ego. But something that cannot be voiced, cannot be thought of, something that's just an awareness that is very detached, that is called consciousness. The ego is something we saw that in deep sleep state, it's completely dormant. But awareness is always there, even in deep sleep state, even in the absence of the ego. The ego, we know, is changing every day, it's different, but that awareness is a changeless presence. That is called chit. So in you, there is this awareness. And it's not like we have to be that awareness. Be that awareness. You already are that awareness. All that's required is just tune into it. We don't have to, it's not being aware. It's you are aware already. You are awareness. Just tune into it. Tune into that part of you, which is that. And then you will understand what is chit. So Sat, changeless presence. Chit, it is that awareness in which everything happens. It cannot be voiced, it cannot be thought of, it's not changing, it doesn't end, and it's completely detached and therefore free. Now, one question is there. Seems like ego and consciousness are opposite to each other. Does it mean the amount of awareness in deep sleep is higher and ego lesser, but in wake, our awareness is very dormant? So in waking state, our awareness is very dormant. Awareness, remember, is changeless. It's changeless. Nothing happens to that awareness. It's the same. It's the same. That's why it's sat. What is happening, what is really changing is that ego. There is very nice one book. It's by Vidyaranya Swami called Natakadeepa. And he explains consciousness as a light in like a Broadway show. So what he explains is, let's say if you're in a Broadway show or in any show, and there's a dancer, there's someone dancing. That dancer will do different things, right? And when the dancer is dancing, all kinds of moves that it does, where it sways here, it sways there, it goes here, it goes there. It does all of the turns, all of the twirls. The light that's illuminating that dancer is the same. It's just the same. It's the same. Don't think of spotlights and colored lights and all of that. Back in the day, they didn't have that. Just let's say there's a light illuminating the dancer. Let's just say it's one light illuminating the dancer. That light is the same. It's not moving. It's not affected. It's the same. If the dancer does this move, nothing happens to the light. If the dancer is very sad, nothing happens to the light. If the dancer is very happy, nothing happens to the light. The light is just there. But if the light is not there, you cannot see the dancer. Now, he takes it a step further and says that when the dancer leaves the stage, the light still illumines. The dancer has left the stage, gone to the green room, is changing costume, whatever. The light still illumines the stage. So this is like waking and deep sleep. When the dancer is there, up and alive and moving and roaring, consciousness is illuminating. When the dancer goes out, like in deep sleep, still consciousness is illuminating. Nothing is happening to consciousness. It's just the ego that's moving about, that's doing this and doing that. Therefore, that is absolutely unaffected and free. All the movement, all of the things belong to the dancer and not to the consciousness. And the key point is that without that consciousness, there's no dancer. You won't be able to see any dancer. Without consciousness, we won't be able to see life. We won't be able to experience life. Is that clear? All right. Now, we've seen Sat, we've seen Chit. I will pause here to make sure everything's clear. And then, Ananda, we can maybe take up next week. Given the constant change in and around us, how do we get to this deep sleep lack of change? Okay, to realize that we are pure consciousness, how do we do it in this changing world, right? You don't have to get into any state. That's why we're doing what we're doing, is the process of vichara or inquiry. We're inquiring into everything. And that's the way you get into it. It's not like you have to do anything extraordinary because it's you. It's your nature. All that we're trying to do is unravel the layers that are not you and say, that's where you are. That's who you are. When you take away your 5 sheaths, means take away your notions of the 5 sheaths, of the 3 bodies, of the 3 states, then what's left? What's left is not nothing. What's left is you. So how do we get to this point is through deep inquiry, through deep study. We have to get that understanding that is you. We don't have to bring it or make it happen or reach somewhere because it's already you. We're just peeling your layers away. That's it. That's all that's happening. So even if you think you're not Atma, you're already Atma right now. Just what's necessary is to access that. Is that clear? it may seem very unrealistic because we are just starting out on the process. So it may seem very unrealistic. But as you go deeper and deeper into it, your mind will say, yeah, gosh, this is true. Your mind will try slowly understand. It seems unrealistic. It seems like, wow, this is all a little crazy. But you just keep going with it. Keep going with it. And you will see. Okay, there's a question here. Are we using the ego to understand what consciousness is? Yes. So it's really funny, but our nature is consciousness. And really speaking, if we knew that, we're set. But we don't know that our nature is consciousness. So we are using our ego to inquire into who we are, that we are beyond this ego. Does that make sense? So we're using the ego to inquire into that which lies beyond the ego. And by that, the ego is dropped. And that's why some people don't want or don't like this process of inquiry, because they feel like, oh, I'm going to lose myself. I'm going to lose my sense of self. I'm going to lose my personality, my individuality. People are scared of that. But actually, it's not that. We're going to discover or find who we really are. So we just need the ego to turn in that direction. After that, we remain as we are. Was that clear? Okay. Any other doubts from anybody? Yes. It's a good question. Why do we have such a hard time getting there? If it's us, it's a changeless presence. Why? Because very beautifully in our Upanishads, it says, Paranchikhani Vyatranat Swayambhu, which means our mind is turned outwards. That's the problem. Our mind has become very extrovert. So we are looking, but we are looking outside into this world where it's not. And that's why all our spiritual practices, all our sadhanas, our karma yoga, bhakti yoga, the only thing they're doing is turning the mind here, turning the mind inward. Because only when the mind is turned inward, then we will get it. So although it's there, it's a changeless presence, we should get it, definitely, but the mind has gone outward. And with this mind, samosa, pakora, and all of these, there is no way, there's no room for sat. The mind has got to come in, learn to be subtle, stable, clear. Then we will be able to get it. All right. There's one more question I'll answer on chat. Would you say we are supposed to remind ourselves of our consciousness every time to keep that awareness above our egos? Yes. And that's why we meet every week. To remind ourselves that we are consciousness. That we are not this ego, this body, this mind, this intellect. A daily reminder is what is required. And therefore, in Sadhana Panchakam, in one of Adi Shankaracharyaji's texts, he says, Vedo nityam adhiyatam, means every day study, every day reflect, every day think that you are children of immortal bliss. You are immortal. Your nature is love, it's peace, it's truth, it's awareness. Here, the Upanishad is giving us so many wonderful compliments, our true nature. But yet we like to read something else or watch something else or do something else. So mind is still in that realm of wanting to go out. So we have to work on our minds, have to work on that so we can turn inward and realize this truth. Yeah? Clear? Okay. So next week, we will see Ananda. So we've seen Sat, Chit, Ananda. And then we will see the source of all of this information, which we call the Upanishads. So, please ponder over this subject, a little subtle, but if we are able even to grasp a little bit of it, it will give us utmost peace in our daily living. Okay? Say a closing prayer. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om everyone. See you next week.